This is Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
I'm the only lawyer ever to obtain a court ruling that a president of the United States committed a crime.
For truth. For competition.
As a young lawyer, I helped break up AT&T. That's why you have all your cell phones today.
For sovereignty. For the Republic.
I'm the guy who, at Judicial Watch, which I founded, uncovered the Chinagate scandal. Millions of dollars going to the Clinton campaign, corrupting our political system.
For the privacy of citizens.
And I'm the only guy to have enjoined the National Security Agency from mass surveillance on hundreds of millions of Americans.
Tearing it up.
I'm the son of meat packers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
Bringing it back.
We're going to take this country apart and put it back together again in the way envisioned by our founding fathers.
It's not just talk.
We're not just regurgitating news stories. Larry Klayman, special prosecutor, is making the news.
And now, here's Larry.
Welcome to this week's edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. I always say we have a very special show. We have an important show. I don't want to sound like Sean Hannity and overplay it, but the reality is we have a super, super important show today because we finally have a president, President Donald J. Trump, who will talk about the judiciary, particularly the federal judiciary, in a way that is reality, not fiction. We don't have somebody like George W. Bush or H.W. Bush or anybody else who tries to pretend that our system of justice is equal, who tries to pretend that the establishment doesn't have to address these issues while the people are being screwed, frankly. We have a president who actually calls it as he sees it. And I've been doing that now for many, many years. You know, if you go to our website at freedomwatchusa.org, you'll find an article called Larry Klayman One Man Tea Party that, in effect, I invented the Tea Party. I was out there before it even existed because I saw the inequity in the system. And that's why I started Judicial Watch on July 29th, 1994, is because of the judges. It's because I saw going in front of them how their personal biases and prejudices would influence decision-making. And the judge in this particular instance that we're talking about, the one who just ruled against the president in the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of California, that's part of the Ninth Circuit, of course, was appointed by President Obama. Now, he may not be a bad person in regular life, but the reality is that his thinking is colored by the person that appointed him, by the person who sponsored him to get on the court. And when these judges get on the court, they feel that they have to pay back the favor frequently. And I've seen that now for my 41 years of legal practice. I've seen it on both sides of the fence. If you go in with a judge who's leftist and there's a political issue, you can probably forget it. If you go in with a judge who is a rightist or a conservative, you have a chance and you'll succeed perhaps. It shouldn't be that way. There should be equal justice. So I want to play you the clip of the President of the United States reacting to the recent decision which allows for illegals to come into this country and to claim asylum, as about 10,000 of them are amassing on our southern border in Tijuana, Mexico, and elsewhere. I want to play that clip. And later in the show, we're going to have former Congressman Bob Barr, former U.S. attorney from the Northern District of Georgia, someone who I admire as my friend, who I could trust, the only one in Congress I ever could, who, along with me and others, introduced articles of impeachment with regard to Bill Clinton. He's going to give you his thoughts on this, which are very similar to my own, but I want you to get another take. But for now, the time being, let's hear from President Trump. Let it roll, Al. Al's our great producer.
This was an Obama judge, and I'll tell you what, it's not going to happen like this anymore. It means an automatic loss, no matter what you do, no matter how good your case is. And the Ninth Circuit is really something we have to take a look at. It's a disgrace what happens with the Ninth Circuit. We will win that case in the Supreme Court of the United States.
The president's right. Ultimately, he will win that case, but it will take several months, if not a year, to do it, to get up to the Supreme Court. There's no guarantee also, with Chief Justice Roberts now at the helm, that it'll ever see the light of day. Remember who Justice Roberts is. He was appointed by Bush. He's someone who rubber-stamped Obamacare. He's the reason we have this big, big health care and economic problem today. He flipped at the last minute. God knows why. I mean, was it because, as our whistleblower, one of my clients, said that he was under surveillance? Did they have something on him that flipped him? This is, of course, why I've been fighting against the NSA, the CIA, the FBI, particularly when they were controlled by the Obama administration. because people were being coerced, they were being blackmailed. And even if they weren't, just the fact that it was known that there was this mass surveillance gets certain people who feel vulnerable to take the actions that obviously the establishment wants on both political sides of the fence. So this is the risk of what we face today. And I have to say with the president, it's just not the Ninth Circuit. You've got the District of Columbia Circuit. You have the 11th Circuit. You have other circuits who are stacked with judges who are so politicized that you can't get a fair and equal decision if your case has anything to do with politics. And that's, of course, why at Freedom Watch, and you can go to freedomwatchusa.org, we're moving to citizens' grand juries. The American people need to take justice into their own hands in a peaceful and legal way. Justice Anton Scalia, back in 1992, in a case Williams, United States versus Williams, said the grand jury belongs to the American people, not the three branches of government. We need to move from that. We need to indict people. We need to try them. We need to sentence them. We need to seek to have the sentences legally and peacefully enforced. But President Trump has just scratched the surface. It's not just the Ninth Circuit. It's not just politicized Obama, Clinton, Bush, or whatever judges, because they're all politicized nearly. Very few that aren't. Judge Royce Lamberth in the District of Columbia, he tells it as he sees it, so to speak. Former Judge Stanley Sporkin, same thing. Judge Sanders Sauls, all of them, Republicans. But then we've got Judge Emmett Sullivan, who's a Democrat on the left, and he plays it straight. And there are some who play it straight, but they're less than 1% on the federal court. And that's why I've recommended a new way of selecting judges. That's why we're going to have a seminar next year in Washington, hope to get it televised on C-SPAN and widely on social media, on how we can have a new way of appointing judges. And I'll talk a little bit about that. But you know what? It's not just judges. It's not just our court system. It's the bar associations that regulate lawyers. They're generally run by leftists. They go against people who they want to remove from the practice of law, who don't agree with their ideology. They look the other way at other lawyers who are, in fact, in line with their ideology. Look at what Lanny Davis, that vile Democrat judge who supported Clinton, best friend of Hillary Clinton, went to Yale Law School with her. He makes lies about Michael Cohen and what happened with Donald Trump. He admits that he lies. The Bar Association takes no action. Look at what happened with David Kendall of Williams and Connolly, who's defended the Clintons so many years. And, I went up against, and I'm still going up against in cases. He just helps Hillary Clinton destroy the emails on her private email server, obstruction of justice. Does the District of Columbia Bar do anything about that? No, they look the other way. But instead they go after lawyers who they consider to be on the other side of their political fence and to try to have them removed from the practice of law. So this permeates society. Look at social media. You heard Laura Loomer last week on our show, brave, valiant, conservative female activist. This week she was removed from Twitter permanently because she talked about Islam, the truth about Islam, that they tolerate people who are bigoted towards homosexuals, that they're anti-woman, etc. So she's removed. Because in this country today, minorities have more rights than the majority. We should all have the same rights, but we don't. If you're black, if you're homosexual, if you are Muslim or whatever, you're given the benefit of the doubt. But if you're a white male or even a white female like Laura Loomer, you're not. I mean, Laura Loomer is also Jewish, and I'll tell you something, there are more hate crimes against Jews, and you know that I'm a Jewish Christian. So I feel for both sides. Jews and Christians are persecuted, but of course they're not protected, not at all. So the whole country's flipped, and the country has been skewed far to the left. Yes, we did retain the governorship, conservatives, in Florida, as well as picked up a U.S. senator. I didn't advocate who to vote for, but I'll tell you something in my heart. I know who I wanted to win, and I know who I've personally voted for. But this is few and far between. We're entering into, and we are in already, a war between the left and the right. And the left is using whatever it can. It uses judges. It uses our justice system. It uses bar associations. It uses social media. It uses networks, CNN, MSNBC. And then, on the other side of the fence, really all there is, and I trust that it's not, because I urge you to watch Newsmax, which I'm on frequently, Newsmax TV and others. But Fox News is moving to the left, too. They're going with the flow. I mean, they've done many things that are critical of the president lately, frankly, that he didn't deserve because they want to, quote, be journalists. They even supported CNN in the lawsuit to have Jim Acosta, their reporter, their obnoxious, disrespectful reporter, reinstated at the White House. And there was no basis to do that. And this is another example. Look at the judge who issued that order, Judge Michael Kelly, a Trump appointee. President Trump took bad advice from the Republican establishment and put this guy on the bench. He's absolutely worthless. I had him in a case that was dealing with perjury. He didn't do anything about that because it was a prominent public interest group. It happened to be Judicial Watch, as a matter of fact. They don't want to take on anybody. They don't want to ruffle the media. They don't want to go against the media. They don't want to swim upstream. They want to swim downstream with the flow. And that's what Fox News is doing right now as well. They're swimming downstream with the flow because that's where this country's headed. And the demographics of this country, forget it. There's no longer going to be a Republican-controlled House of Representatives, notwithstanding the fact that the people that were in charge blew it. They didn't reform Obamacare. They didn't build a wall. They didn't do anything that the people voted for. So, yeah, they were thrown out on their rear ends. So that's why you have to go to freedomwatchusa.org. We're your private Justice Department. We're the People's Justice Department. We do what we have to do. Larry Klayman lays it on the line, and so do the people that work with us, and so do our supporters. It's very, very important that you contribute with tax-deductible contributions because we need to get bigger. We're very small. And because I'm not on Fox News, because I say what I think, otherwise there's censorship on Fox News as well, I have to reach you a number of different ways through our website, through this radio show, share it, through the appearances that I do in Newsmax, through the articles I write in WorldNet Daily and Newsmax and my blog, Klayman's Court. We need to mobilize the American people because we're at serious risk right now and we're headed down the drain. So go to freedomwatchusa.org, sign up for our Justice League. I'm going to be right back with a very important announcement about a new case that we brought that deals with this immigration problem at the border.
Dangerous.
You don't hear, use the court and the law.
Lethal.
This is bad.
Special prosecutor
Very bad.
Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
We have this crisis at the border. It is a crisis. You know, the Democrats, the leftists have said, oh, no problem. Let's let these people in. Let's have open borders. We don't care if they're criminals. We don't care if they're people that have been infiltrated from the Middle East, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, whatever. No problem, because you know what? These illegal immigrants, they're going to vote Democrat. And in fact, they are voting Democrat. In California, for instance, if you have a driver's license, and you can get one if you're an illegal alien, you can vote. Same thing in New York, other states as well. Then you have this voting by mail where you can vote that way and then go in person, vote twice. Sometimes you can even vote 3 times. In California, it's not that hard. So when the president said that he won the popular vote back in 2016, I believe that he did because there's this rampant voter fraud, particularly in California and New York, our first most populous state and our fourth most populous state. But let's talk about this immigration crisis because it has come to fruition. And we see that the mayor of Tijuana is calling it an invasion, exactly what Trump called it. People there, the Mexicans don't want them there. I mean, I don't care whether some of these people are good or not. Unless you're here legally, you shouldn't be here at all. But we have a case that I just filed in my personal capacity for a Texas Ranger and his wife. Texas Ranger, along with his colleagues, were arresting drug cartel dealers and criminals from Mexico on the Texas side of the border. Now, from the Mexican side of the border, the Mexican police in that state, or perhaps national police, because we're going to use discovery in this case, which I just filed last week on behalf of the Texas Ranger and his wife, they shot across the border and hit my client in very sensitive areas. I'll keep it clean here. In his leg, destroyed his relationship with his wife, almost killed him. And it was an attack by the Mexican government against this Texas Ranger, probably because the president has been talking out about the cartels, about the infiltration from Mexico, the uncontrolled immigration. it's most likely that the Mexican police, in this instance, the state police or federal police, it's payback time. So we're going to shoot a Texas Ranger. Well, this is part of the problem here. The Mexican people aren't bad people. If you go to California, you go to other parts of this country, Arizona, they're very hardworking. They're good people. I really like them. But there are some really bad people, too. And that's true of all people that come in from everywhere. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't have measured, vetted immigration that comes into this country. I'm pro-immigration. Back in 1996, while I cranked up Judicial Watch, I had a presidential debate on immigration because I felt that there was too much pushback that immigration is good for this country as long as it's legal. So it was on C-SPAN, as a matter of fact, played 6 times because some crazy leftist showed up, a socialist, got up on the stage and effectively took everybody hostage by taking the microphone and not getting off the stage. But that's neither here nor there. You can find it on C-SPAN. You can find it on our website at freedomwatchusa.org if you want to see that Larry Klayman is actually pro-immigration, but not illegal immigration, not with criminals. And that's the way the president is. This case is super important. And, we brought other cases recently. We talk about this leftist war against the rest of us. I brought cases for Sheriff Joe Arpaio against the New York Times. We're going to be bringing cases against Rolling Stone, against the Huffington Post. He's been defamed. He's been called a felon. Chief Justice Roy Moore in Alabama has been falsely accused of being a pedophile when he's a fine man, a fine Christian man. Cases were brought against Sacha Baron Cohen of Showtime. And there's another case on the horizon, most likely against Showtime as well, with regard to a woman who was the worst harassed by Roger Ailes at Fox News by the name of Laurie Loon. They're actually doing a TV series, 8-part miniseries, and they have an actress which is cast as her. And the actress is a prominent actress, Annabelle Wallace, and they're not likely telling the story truthfully about how she was destroyed by Roger Ailes. In fact, they're probably going to say that she was Roger Ailes' pimp. So I put them on notice that unless they include her and use her as a consultant to get it right, that they're going to be sued. There'll be another case against Showtime. This is what we're facing these days.
1 minute.
We're facing a war between left and right. And that's why our citizens' grand juries are hard-hitting cases. Freedom Watch does what Judicial Watch used to do. Judicial Watch mainly just gets documents today. Tom Fitton's not a lawyer. And that's why when I left, it became transparency in government primarily, not promoting and prosecuting government ethics and lack of ethics, for that matter, through hard-hitting cases. So we really need your support, and I need you to share this radio show. In fact, I wrote a blog last week, Klayman's Court on Newsmax. I want you to read that about the reality of our country today, because I'll tell you something, it's rock bottom. And when the president can't make a comment that no other president's made, which is absolutely true, that the federal judiciary is politically biased and people mock that, then we're in a lot of trouble. I'll be right back with Bob Barr.
And now, 4 words that make corrupt politicians make wee-wee in their little pants.
Transparency and the rule of law will be the touchstones of this president.
But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
Be the one who makes our country great again. Go to freedomwatchusa.org and donate.
I'm back with my very good friend, my dear friend, someone who I admire. I know it's mutual because we worked to impeach Bill Clinton many, many years ago. I found him to be an honest person, someone who was good to his word, the only one on Capitol Hill to this day that I could ever trust. And I know I've said that many times when he comes on the show. He's former U.S. Congressman from Georgia. He was also the U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Georgia. So Bob knows what he's talking about. Bob Barr. Bob, I want to get your take on the comments of Chief Justice John Roberts with regard to there's no such thing as an Obama, Clinton, Bush, or any other judge on the courts. You know differently. You've been a lawyer as long as I have. I've been a lawyer going on 42 years. Maybe you're even a little bit more experienced than I am in that regard. I think 42 years is pretty long. And I want to get your take also on the Ninth Circuit and the state of the judiciary today and how we don't have equal justice in our country, how it's very politicized.
Thank you, Larry. The reality is, contrary to what the Chief Justice says, is that different judges rule differently, and to basically look at the judiciary through what Chief Justice Roberts is doing, that is rose-colored glasses, and say, oh, gee, all judges are fair and objective. It doesn't matter who appointed them. They all look just at the substance and the law here, and no political or social policy matters influence their decisions is just nonsense. I mean, it's just not the case. And this is particularly troublesome with the Ninth Circuit in particular, other circuits as well that you and I have seen and practiced in. But it's also very hypocritical for the Chief Justice to be attacking Trump for saying, for recognizing the reality that Obama justices were chosen because of their philosophical and judicial and political outlook, the same as Bush or Reagan judges were chosen because of their philosophy. Because I recall just 2 years ago, I think it was, Larry, during the 2016 presidential campaign, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg went public and made some very, very critical, personally critical comments publicly about then candidate Donald Trump. And gee, I don't remember the Chief Justice berating her for allowing political considerations to enter into her judgments. So it's very hypocritical as well as an inaccurate position that the Chief Justice is taking here.
Well, it's part of the club in Washington, D.C. You know it, Bob. I mean, we were all looking in from outside of the club, as I frequently say. Neither you nor I want to be a member of the club that would have us as a member, and we're not Groucho Marx either. But it's part of that club is that, hey, you know, I'm the Chief Justice. All these people work under me technically, you know, and so I'm going to protect them at the expense of the American people. And what I take offense at is that it's not truthful and that there's some people out there that'll drink that Kool-Aid and believe it. And it's simply not true because, as you pointed out, on any given day, you can go and make the same legal argument in front of a Trump judge or an Obama judge or a Bush judge or a Clinton judge and get a diametrically opposed result. You can even get a result like we got in the last week or so before Judge Michael Kelly in Washington, D.C., where he puts, this is a Trump appointee, where he puts Jim Acosta back into the White House because likely he's worried about blowback from the establishment mainstream leftist media that he doesn't want to be criticized in the future. Trump took bad advice in putting him in there. So even if it's a Trump judge or a Bush judge, they're political. I thought W's judges were almost as bad as Obama's in many ways because they played the political game. So this is the problem, and I hope that next year we can have a seminar. I'd like you to come, Bob. You're very distinguished. Most recently, by the way, Lindsey Graham, I was watching Fox News, actually endorsed you as the new Attorney General. Okay, I mean, that's your stature. This is a Bob Barr who would actually do things straight for a change. And, you know, so I highly value your opinion. Let me add one other thing, and then I want to get your further comments, is that years ago, I'd say about 4 years ago, we had some conflicts of interest on the Supreme Court. Before that, we had Justice Ginsburg again. Her husband owned shares of stock in companies she was ruling on as a justice of the Supreme Court. Clearly, ethical violation of the Code of Judicial Conduct. You can't do that. That's a clear-cut conflict of interest. And then we had a controversy between Justice Kagan and Justice Clarence Thomas as to whether they had a conflict of interest, both of them with regard to sitting on a case involving Obamacare. Kagan had a bigger conflict because she actually advised the Obama administration and President Obama on the legality of Obamacare, yet she was sitting there ruling on whether Obamacare was legal, okay, which, of course, Chief Justice Roberts rubber stamped at the end. And Roberts, in issuing his annual report, Bob, I want to get your thoughts on this and your comment, said that they're not responsible to obeying the rules of ethics under the Code of Judicial Conduct, the federal code, because, number one, they're confirmed by the U.S. Senate, and that means that their ethics are beyond reproach, that they were so-called investigated. And then Roberts even said, I'm not even sure constitutionally the U.S. Judicial Code of Conduct applies to we Supreme Court justices. This is this guy who's out there And there are rumors about Roberts. I don't want to get into it. I also believe, based on a whistleblower, that he's been illegally surveyed by the FBI, the NSA, and the National Security Agency, and others. And this is a guy, frankly, who I think should be impeached. Talk about impeachment. I think we need a new Chief Justice. So in any event, give me your thoughts on all this.
It really is disturbing, Larry, when the Chief Justice, or really any justice on the Supreme Court or a federal Court of Appeals judge, for that matter, takes the position that federal judges, simply because they are appointed and confirmed by the Senate to lifetime appointments, do not need to abide by canons of ethics as other judges do. If anything, they ought to be more concerned about it, and the rules ought to apply with greater force, because these are judges with lifetime appointment as opposed to state judges who I believe in all the states have limited appointments, have to either be reappointed or reelected. So at least the citizens who are affected by the rulings of state court judges have, at least in theory, some ability to get rid of a judge that does not act ethically, and there are state judicial qualification commissions also. But to say that judges with lifetime appointment who can only be removed by the impeachment process, which, as you know and I know, is extremely difficult, is really sort of a warped view of the judiciary. Roberts, it seems to me, should pay more attention to the substance of rulings and the substance of the Constitution and the theory of the Constitution than simply trying to show the world, particularly the liberals, that he's a really nice guy and is not going to allow conservative judicial thought to permeate the judgments or work of the Supreme Court. It seems to me that that's not the job of the Chief Justice to prove to the liberals that they are not going, the conservative, so-called conservative appointed judges are not going to allow political or social concerns to enter into their judgments. It's really a strange position that Chief Justice Roberts is taking here, and of course we saw that begin to emerge with his ruling upholding the Obamacare.
That's right. Just so people know, and this is why I want to have the seminar, I'm going to invite you, I'm going to invite Chief Justice Roy Moore, other judges throughout this country, retired, hopefully some sitting ones will come, is that the only way you can address ethical misconduct or misconduct in terms of not obeying the law is in the federal system to file a complaint with judicial councils in the different circuits. Now, what happens then? The same judges that are in the courthouse that eat lunch with these people, that socialize with these judges who have committed ethical violations, throw these complaints in the trash. I filed a number of them just on principle. And the only time I ever got a judge held accountable was in Tennessee in the state court system, where a judge broke through the attorney-client privilege of my client and ordered someone on the stand to testify. And if he didn't, he was going to be thrown in jail. Okay. Now, I don't even know what happened to her after that point, because she's no longer on the bench, but the Judicial Council of Tennessee, the Judicial Commission, would not tell me what the sanction was. One time in 42 years. And, of course, this is why I founded Judicial Watch. Where does the name come from? Watching judges. Because I had seen this over all these different years. Now, Judicial Watch doesn't do this anymore. Freedom Watch does it. But judges, in my opinion, are our most important public servants because they protect us from the tyranny of the government and the tyranny of our citizenry. But at the same time, they have become the tyrants. And, of course, remember, Bob, that a big cause of the American Revolution was when King George III took our criminal justice system back to the court of King James, took it away from us. And that was the trigger. They took our guns away from us. They took our criminal justice system away from us. They overtaxed us. That's what we're going to be getting in the future once these Democrats take hold of the Senate and the House, and they will. And so we are in a crisis. And, Bob, we need to do something about it. And I guess not just you and me, but our listeners and our supporters. And, when you say conservative, what we're talking about is obeying the Constitution. I don't want so-called conservative judges to make up the law like the left frequently does. I just want them to follow the law.
There was I agree, Larry, very much so. There was a very interesting article. You might have seen it I think a few days or maybe a week or so ago by John Yoo out at Berkeley. And he made a similar argument that conservatives need to be very careful what they ask for, that what it seems to be nowadays, a lot of conservative groups want the justices, the Supreme Court, and the federal courts of appeals as well to rule in favor of what the conservative groups want the law to be rather than necessarily what the law is. So conservatives want the federal courts to make policy and political decisions that they like, that they agree with, the same as the left wants to have judges do that on their side. And this process has become extremely political, unfortunately. And I could understand it if Chief Justice Roberts was saying, we need to get away from that. We need to get back to deciding issues truly on the Constitution, constitutional principles, and constitutional history, and the language of the Constitution. But for him to go out there and make this Pollyanna-ish argument that, it doesn't matter who appointed or what philosophy was reflected in the appointment of a particular justice is nonsensical. It's just not true.
Well, and then worse, he won't enforce ethical rules against Supreme Court justices, and he doesn't enforce them against lower court justices either. I've taken issues up there on those grounds. I've had judges that have taken direct contributions from Hillary Clinton at the D.C. Circuit and ruled against my clients, two clients that had sons killed at Benghazi. And, she sat on the case, Patricia Millett, ultra-leftist on the D.C. Circuit, just as bad as the Ninth Circuit. Believe me, D.C. Circuit's just as bad. And I have to say these things, even though I'm in front of them. Someone's got to say them, Bob.
Well,
that's what's important.
You do, and it's very important. And you make a good point also, Larry, that while I think the worst of the 12 federal judicial circuits, the 11 circuits plus D.C., is the Ninth Circuit. You see very, very bad decisions coming out of my own 11th Circuit, where we are here in Georgia, and the D.C. Circuit as well. One thing that I think might help would be if Congress would develop the backbone, which of course they won't, to split up the Ninth Circuit, which has gotten way too big for one thing, and that would provide an opportunity to bring a little bit of balance to the western states that are all incorporated now within the Ninth Circuit.
Well, Bob, we're going to do it. We're going to make some recommendations here. That's a start, but we need to go further than that. I'm sure you agree. Thank you for being on our show. We'll bring you back. Again, Lindsey Graham wants Bob Barr to be Attorney General. You can see why. Thanks, Bob. God bless you.
Thank you, Larry.
Before he was a trial lawyer, he sliced him and diced him.
People used to ask me, Larry, what caused you to start Judicial Watch and now Freedom Watch, given the powerful forces in this country that put you at risk?
In a meat packing plant.
I'm the son of meat packers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
A very special prosecutor, Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
We're back with the verdict. Let me tell you what the verdict is this week. The verdict is that Chief Justice John Roberts needs to be impeached. We need a new Chief Justice. Frankly, he's a disgrace to the Supreme Court. He's destroyed the economy before it got back in a full way under President Donald Trump. Thank God it's moving forward. But still, Obamacare continues to harm ordinary Americans. And this is the reason for impeachment. You don't have to have a crime. High crimes and misdemeanors, it can do anything. We have talked today about impeaching the president, impeaching Justice Kavanaugh. Well, let's impeach John Roberts. Of course, it's not going to happen, and we need to rise up, and we need to make our views clear. But the American people don't want to be lied to. What Chief Justice Roberts has done in taking on the president is a lie. He is a rhino Republican. He is an establishment Republican. He plays cards with everybody in Capitol Hill. He goes to the soirees in Georgetown. He wants to be accepted. He's in his own mind, the new American nobility. He's above everybody else. In fact, he sits there on the high court on a hill right behind the Capitol, and he thinks that he's better than the rest of us. So actually, I think he's the worst, because I'll tell you something. Politicized judges who are making decisions at least in line with their ideology, however legally incorrect and however sanctionable that is, they're staying true to what they believe, is that this Chief Justice is simply a political hack. And I'll tell you something, I made mention of it with Bob Barr, is that we represent Patricia Smith and Charles Woods. We brought a case against Hillary Clinton for the use of her private email server, which gave up the coordinates of Ambassador Chris Stevens, which led terrorists to find the location of the ambassador, and in the process killed the sons of our clients, these brave heroes, Ty Woods and Sean Smith. We had a Obama-appointed hack judge by the name of Amy Berman Jackson dismiss that case at the lower court level on the eve of Memorial Day, if you can believe that, to stick it to these Gold Star parents, to curry favor with Hillary Clinton at a time that perhaps the judge thought she'd be made president. She might get a higher appointment to the D.C. Circuit or wherever. And I took this all the way up the line to the Supreme Court, and I said, look, she's not immune. We have to decide this issue. Federal officials, if they're committing crimes or violating the law, can't hide behind immunity. I just wanted them to take a look at the scope of the so-called Westfall Act, which determines that. The case was thrown out before there was even discovery. They wouldn't do it. They wouldn't take it up. Because, in Washington, D.C., the elite of both political parties protect each other because we are better than the rest of the country. We deserve special privileges. Ha, ha, ha. We are the intelligentsia in our nation's capital. And that's why I don't ever want to be part of a club that would have me as a member, and you shouldn't either, but become a part of Freedom Watch's Justice League. Go to freedomwatchusa.org. Sign our petition to have me appointed special counsel. Hopefully, the president is listening. Hopefully, he's going to stop taking the bad advice of his lawyers, because he's already in the cart going towards the Place of the Bastille, headed for the guillotine at this point, or perhaps the Place of the Vendôme, another place in Paris. That's where they also chop people's heads off. I mean, that's where the president's heading. And frankly, our heads are about ready to be chopped off, whether it's Antifa, whether it's Black Lives Matter, whether it's crazy judges who have a political ideology, whether it's bar associations, whether it's this whole leftist takeover of our country. And we need to stand up, and we need to not be afraid, and we need to do what needs to be done. And that's why I need you to enlist in Freedom Watch's Justice League. You are the superheroes. You are Batman. You are Wonder Woman. You are the Flash. You are everything that's good about this country, and we need to mobilize, and I need your help. So God bless you all. We love you. I love you. And join Freedom Watch by going to freedomwatchusa.org, and we do need to get bigger, so we need your financial help as well. I'll be back next week with another edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. And in the meantime, share this show with all your friends. We're up on YouTube, and we got 100,000 hits in last week's show, but yet our YouTube subscriptions are going down because YouTube, Google are censoring our thought, like they did Laura Loomer and everybody else. So therefore, this show is super important, and I want you also to support Radio America, which is a great, great, great network, because they let me say what I truly believe. And whether you agree with me or not, that's the real use of the First Amendment, not harassing presidents. I'll be right back next week. Until then, God bless you and your family, and have a happy Thanksgiving.